Imagine coming home to find your spouse receiving lavish food deliveries every day. Gourmet meals from exclusive restaurants that seem to appear out of nowhere. At first, it seems like a nice gesture, maybe from a satisfied client or a generous friend. But as the deliveries become a daily routine, the mystery deepens. The food is always her favorite, down to the last detail. Why is she so secretive about it? One day, you decide to follow the delivery man, driven by a growing sense of unease. What you uncover shakes you to your core, leading you into a web of deceit and unspoken truths. As the layers of this mystery unfold, you're left grappling with trust, betrayal, and the painful journey to uncover the truth. This is the story of how something as simple as a meal delivery turned into a quest for truth and understanding in a relationship on the brink. How do I, a 36-year-old man, get my wife, a 38-year-old woman, to tell me who's sending food to her workplace every day? We've been married for 10 years, and in all that time, jealousy has never been a problem for us. We both trust each other completely. In fact, neither of us has ever really had any reason to feel jealous. And that's something I've always appreciated about our relationship. But recently, things started changing. It began with something small, so small that I didn't even notice it at first. My wife stopped eating the food I cooked for her. This wasn't like her. She's always loved my cooking, and I've always taken pride in making meals for us. But then she told me someone was sending her food at work. In the beginning, I thought it was just a sweet and thoughtful thing. I imagined that maybe one of her clients was really grateful for the help she had given them and wanted to show their appreciation by sending her lunch. It seemed like a kind gesture, especially since she works all by herself in a small office. I didn't see anything strange about it at first. In fact, I thought it was kind of cute. I remember joking around with her when the first meal arrived. I said something like, "Wow, someone must really like your work. Maybe you should ask them to send some for me too." We both laughed, and I didn't give it another thought. It was just a nice little surprise, and I was happy that someone appreciated her hard work. But then things started to get a bit weird. The food deliveries didn't just happen once or twice. They started coming more and more often. What was initially a rare treat suddenly became a regular thing. Every day, there was a new delivery at her office. And it wasn't just any kind of food. This was high-end, expensive stuff. The kind of meals you only get at fancy restaurants or on special occasions. I started to wonder who would go to such lengths. Who would spend so much money on these meals, day after day, just to make sure she had the best food? It wasn't just a simple thank you anymore. It was like someone was trying really hard to win her over, to impress her in a big way. The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. It just didn't seem like a normal way for a client to say thanks. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who on earth was sending her all this food? And more importantly, why was she being so secretive about it? Every time I asked her about the mysterious deliveries, she would just brush it off like it was no big deal. She'd say things like, "Oh, I don't know who it is," or "It's just a random thing. Don't worry about it." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. It wasn't just that she didn't seem to care who was behind it. It was the fact that the food was always exactly what she liked. I mean, down to the smallest detail. It wasn't just general favorite foods. It was specific dishes, made exactly the way she liked them. The more I thought about it, the stranger it seemed. It was almost like the person sending the food knew her tastes and preferences, as well as I did. Maybe even better. One day, I decided to play a little trick on her. I thought it would be funny and maybe help me get to the bottom of this mystery. I told her that I was the one who had sent the food that day. I expected her to laugh, maybe even be happy that I was doing something nice for her. But to my surprise, she didn't laugh at all. Instead, she got annoyed. Her reaction was so different from what I had expected. She didn't believe me, not even for a second. In fact, she gave me this look, like she knew something I didn't, and even winked at me, as if we were both in on some kind of joke. It was confusing, and it made me feel like I was missing something important. When I asked her again, hoping she'd finally tell me who was behind the deliveries, she just shrugged and repeated that she didn't know. Her reaction left me with even more questions. Why didn't she believe me? Was she hiding something? The more I thought about it, the more unsettled I became. It was clear that something was going on, but I couldn't figure out what. I tried not to be paranoid. I really did. But the whole situation started to get under my skin. It wasn't just about the food deliveries anymore. It was about the strange way she was acting. I kept telling myself that I was overthinking things, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why wouldn't she just tell me who was sending the food? If it was just a client or a friend, why keep it a secret? I kept thinking about it, and the more I did, the more it bothered me. I didn't want to seem like the kind of person who gets jealous or worried over small things, but this didn't feel small anymore. It felt like there was something she wasn't telling me, and that really started to weigh on my mind. Around this time, I noticed that she began acting a little differently in other ways too. She'd show off the food that was delivered, almost like she was bragging about it. She'd talk about how amazing it was, how it was from some fancy restaurant, and even compare it to the meals I made for her. She'd say things like, "This is so much better than what you make," or "You should try to make something like this." Every time she said something like that, it stung a little bit. I didn't say anything though. I didn't want to come across as insecure or controlling. I wanted to be supportive, to show that I wasn't bothered by it. But the truth was, it hurt. Deep down, it was really getting to me. I started to feel like maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe she liked this food more than what I made, and maybe she liked whoever was sending it more than she liked me. These thoughts kept swirling around in my head, and the more I tried to ignore them, the more they seemed to take over. One night, I just couldn't keep it inside anymore. The thoughts were driving me crazy, and I knew I had to say something. So I decided to sit her down and talk. I wasn't angry, I was just really confused. I needed to know what was going on. I told her that I didn't care if she was ordering the food herself. I just wanted to understand why she was hiding it from me. As soon as I started talking, I could see her mood change. I thought she might open up and tell me what was really going on, but instead, her reaction took me by surprise. She got defensive, even a little angry. She said I was making a big deal out of nothing and that I was overreacting. But that only made me more confused. If it really wasn't a big deal, then why was she being so secretive? Why wouldn't she just tell me the truth? I didn't understand, and her reaction only made me more suspicious. I kept thinking, what was she hiding? Was there something more going on that I didn't know about? The questions kept piling up in my mind, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find any answers. Her sudden anger, her defensiveness, it all seemed like a red flag. But why? What was she hiding, and why didn't she want me to know? I couldn't help but wonder if there was something deeper, something she wasn't telling me. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. Was it someone from her past? Was it something about her job that she didn't want to talk about? The more I thought about it, the more the curiosity ate at me. As the days went by, her secrecy only seemed to get worse. She started coming home late, always with some new excuse that didn't quite add up. It wasn't just a few times, it was becoming a regular thing. And the food deliveries, they kept coming like clockwork. At first, it was just a strange situation, but now it was starting to feel like something much bigger. It wasn't just about the food anymore. It was about trust. I could feel that slipping away, and it scared me. Every night, I would lie awake, turning things over in my mind, trying to piece together what was happening. But no matter how hard I thought about it, nothing made sense. Why was she acting like this? Why wouldn't she just tell me the truth? The more she kept quiet, the more I felt like I was losing her, like there was something, maybe someone, she didn't want me to know about. The tension built up until one evening, it all came to a head. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. My mind was racing as usual, full of questions I couldn't answer. She walked in, smiling, holding another takeout bag. "Guess what?" she said, her voice cheerful and playful, like nothing was wrong. I got another surprise today. That was it. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. The words just spilled out of me. I turned to her, my hands still wet from washing the dishes, and looked her in the eyes. "Who's sending you this food?" I asked, my voice steady but full of frustration. "And why won't you tell me?" Her smile faltered for just a second, but it was enough to tell me something was off. I waited for her to answer, hoping she'd finally tell me the truth. But instead of relief, I could feel the tension in the room grow even thicker. What was she hiding? And why did it feel like we were on the edge of something that could change everything between us? The silence that followed was unbearable. I could see her trying to think of what to say, but I didn't know if I could trust whatever words came next. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited, the curiosity and fear growing with every second. What was really going on here? And why did it feel like my whole world was about to turn upside down? Her smile vanished immediately, and for a brief moment, I saw something in her eyes that I couldn't quite understand. Was it fear? Guilt? I wasn't sure. But whatever it was, it disappeared almost as quickly as it had appeared. She turned her gaze away, muttering something under her breath that I couldn't make out, and walked out of the kitchen without saying another word. That night, I lay in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind was racing with thoughts and questions about what had just happened. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. What had changed between us? What was happening with her? The confusion and worry kept me from sleeping. I felt trapped between wanting to trust her and needing to know the truth. I didn't want to jump to conclusions or accuse her of anything. It wasn't about that. I just needed to understand what was really going on. The silence and secrecy were becoming unbearable. I wanted answers, even if the truth was painful. It was the only way to find out if we could fix what was broken or if we were too far gone to repair. The uncertainty was consuming me, and I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to find out what was behind all of this, no matter how difficult it might be. The next morning, I made a decision that felt terrible but seemed necessary. I decided to follow her. I hated the idea of snooping, but I couldn't ignore my growing suspicion any longer. As soon as she left for work, I grabbed my keys and went after her. I kept my distance to make sure she wouldn't spot me. I wanted to stay far enough back so she wouldn't see me and get suspicious. I followed her all the way to her office, but I didn't get too close. Instead, I parked a few blocks away and waited. I sat in my car, my heart racing as I watched her office building. She walked inside, and I settled in for what I thought would be a long wait. Hours seemed to stretch on as I sat there, but then something happened sooner than I expected. A man showed up. He was tall and well-dressed, and he was carrying a bag of food. At first, he didn't go straight into the office. Instead, he stood outside for a moment, looking around as if he was checking to see if anyone was watching him. The way he glanced around made me feel uneasy. It was as if he knew he was doing something secretive. After a few minutes, he finally walked up to the door of the office. He knocked, and I could see through the window that she answered. They exchanged a few words, and then he walked inside. I sat there, my mind racing with questions and confusion. Why was he bringing her food? Why was he so cautious? As I watched, I tried to piece together what was happening. This was not just about the food anymore. It was about what this all meant for us. The secrecy, the hidden deliveries. It was clear now that there was more going on than I had imagined. I couldn't stay in my car forever. Eventually, I had to figure out what to do next. I considered going inside myself, but I knew that would be risky and might make things worse. I needed to gather more information to understand what was happening. So I decided to keep waiting. I watched for any signs of what might come next. I hoped that by observing, I could get the answers I desperately needed to make sense of everything. My feelings of worry and doubt grew stronger with each passing minute. What was really going on behind those office doors? My heart was pounding hard in my chest. Who was this man, and why was he bringing food to my wife every day? The sight of him walking into her office with that bag of fancy food made me feel sick to my stomach. I was anxious, but I needed to find out more to understand what was really happening. I waited, feeling like time was dragging on forever, although it was probably just about 20 minutes. Finally, the man came out of the office and walked toward his car. I followed him, trying to stay far enough behind so he wouldn't notice me. I was worried, but I needed answers. He drove to a nearby coffee shop and went inside. I parked a bit down the street and watched him through the window. He sat at a table, pulled out his phone, and started scrolling through it. He seemed calm, almost too calm, and I wondered what he was thinking. I couldn't stay in my car forever. The curiosity and worry were eating me up. I had to confront him and get some answers. I took a deep breath and got out of my car. I walked toward the coffee shop, my nerves on edge. As I approached him, he looked up from his phone. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw me coming. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice calm and collected, almost unnervingly calm. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. This was not how I imagined confronting him, but I knew I had to ask. I cleared my throat and spoke up. "Yes, actually. I need to know why you're bringing food to my wife every day." He looked taken aback, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, maybe confusion or even guilt. But it quickly disappeared, replaced by a neutral expression. "I don't think I understand what you're talking about," he said. I could feel my frustration rising. "Don't play dumb. I've seen you delivering food to her office. What's going on?" He shifted in his seat, and I noticed he seemed uncomfortable. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I'm just doing a favor for a friend. It's nothing personal." "Favor for a friend?" I repeated, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. This isn't just about food. It's about trust. And right now, it feels like you're hiding something from me. He glanced around, clearly uneasy with the situation. "I really can't say much more. It's a private matter. I suggest you talk to your wife if you have concerns." I was taken aback by his response. It was clear he wasn't going to give me any more information. My frustration grew, and I wanted to press him further, but I realized it would be futile. He wasn't going to reveal anything more. I took one last look at him and then turned to leave. As I walked back to my car, my mind was racing. What was this private matter he mentioned? Why was my wife involved in something so secretive? I needed to find out more, and I knew that confronting her directly was the next step. I returned home with a heavy heart and a head full of questions. This situation was becoming more complicated and troubling by the day. I had to prepare myself for the conversation I would have with my wife. It was clear now that the issue was much deeper than I had initially thought. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why are you sending food to my wife?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he just stared at me with an unreadable expression. I could see that he was calm, almost too calm, and it made my anger grow. After a moment, he leaned back in his chair and gave me a mocking smile. "Maybe you should ask her that," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "She's the one who's been enjoying it, after all." I felt a surge of anger, but I forced myself to stay composed. I took a deep breath and tried to focus. "What's going on?" I demanded, my voice firm. "Why are you doing this?" The man shrugged his shoulders, still grinning. "Like I said, maybe you should ask your wife. She seems to like the attention." His words stung, and my frustration boiled over. "What do you mean she likes the attention?" This isn't a joke. I'm trying to understand what's happening here. He looked at me with a smirk that only fueled my irritation. I really can't say more. It's not my place to explain. I'm just here to deliver the food and nothing else. I was taken aback by his dismissive attitude. He wasn't going to give me any more answers, and it was clear he was intentionally being vague. I wanted to press him for more information, but it was obvious he wasn't going to cooperate. Feeling defeated but still determined, I took a step back and sighed. "Fine. If you're not going to tell me anything, I guess I have no choice but to talk to my wife." The man gave me a final, somewhat pitying look. "Good luck with that," he said as he picked up his phone and started typing. I watched him for a moment, then turned and walked out of the coffee shop. As I drove home, my mind was racing. The man's evasive answers only made things more confusing. Why was my wife involved in this? What was the real story behind all these food deliveries? I knew I needed to confront her and get some answers, no matter how difficult the conversation might be. When I got home, I felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. I was ready to have a serious talk with my wife. I needed to know the truth, even if it meant facing something I wasn't prepared for. I stood there, unable to find the right words. My mind was a whirlwind, and it felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. The man's cryptic comments left me stunned. What did he mean? Was there more going on than just food deliveries? Finally, I turned and walked out of the coffee shop. My mind was racing with questions. I didn't have any answers yet, but I knew I had to get to the bottom of this mystery. When I got home that night, I was still shaken. I didn't say anything to my wife. I was at a loss for words. Every time I tried to think about how to approach her, I found myself stumbling over my own thoughts. I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure how to start the conversation. I went through the evening in a daze, unable to focus on anything. I felt like I was walking on a tightrope, balancing between fear and determination. The man's comments had opened up a whole new set of questions, and I needed answers. I knew this wasn't just about the food anymore. There was something bigger happening, and I had to uncover the truth. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. Every time I saw my wife, I wanted to ask her what was going on, but the right moment never seemed to come. The tension between us grew, and I could feel it like a heavy cloud hanging over our home. Then one evening, things started to unravel. As I was going through some old files, I found a note tucked away in a drawer. It was a handwritten letter with no signature, but it was addressed to my wife. The letter mentioned meeting at a specific place and time, and it was signed, "Looking forward to seeing you." Seeing the note made my heart race. Who could have sent this? Why was it hidden? I felt a mix of dread and curiosity. This note might be the key to understanding everything, and I had to confront my wife about it. That night, after dinner, I finally decided to bring it up. I showed her the letter and asked, "Who sent this? What's going on?" Her reaction was immediate. She looked shocked and then quickly became defensive. The conversation turned tense, and she tried to downplay the importance of the letter. But I could tell she was hiding something. The more I pressed for answers, the more she seemed to retreat. In that moment, I realized that the situation was far more complicated than I had thought. The letter was just one piece of the puzzle, and there were many more questions that needed answers. I knew that if I wanted to get to the bottom of this, I had to keep digging and not let myself be discouraged. The story highlights the crucial role of trust and communication in relationships. As the protagonist uncovers the mystery behind the daily food deliveries, it's clear that the heart of the issue isn't just about the food itself, but about the deeper layers of honesty and transparency. This situation underscores the importance of addressing doubts and fears openly with your partner rather than letting them fester. By the end, it becomes evident that confronting issues head-on and seeking clear answers is vital to maintaining a healthy relationship. It's a reminder that transparency and understanding are essential, and that when something feels off, it's worth digging deeper rather than letting it slip into unresolved ambiguity. In relationships, as in life, clarity often brings peace, and this story serves as a powerful illustration of that trait. Own. Comment. Wow, this story is intense. I can totally understand the feeling of confusion and betrayal. It's so unsettling when someone you trust starts acting so secretively. I hope the main character finds out the truth soon and gets some closure. This really makes you think about how important communication and trust are in a relationship. 2. Comment 2. This is so relatable. I've been in a situation where I felt like I was out of the loop, and it was really hard. I can only imagine how stressful it must be to see your partner receiving expensive meals from someone else. I'm curious to see how this unfolds and whether the couple can work through this. Great storytelling kept me hooked the entire time.